And there we go. Just like that, we're recording.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
We really appreciate you being on, man. I know my wife's a huge fan of your book. Full disclosure, I have not read the book, but she relayed a lot of messages to me about the book. So
Gotcha.
I've read the book. I have read the book front to back.
And we have it in the YouTube video.
Yeah. So, Clark, do you want to give us a little bit of background about, I guess, we know you're the owner of Tiger Den CrossFit and the whole meditative fitness process. Do you want to kind of give us a background how that all started?
Sure. It's actually kind of an exciting time because I did just recently take over Tiger's Den. But the coolest thing to me is that how my book got started was from my first workout at that gym is when I had the vision of the book. And I had already had it in mind to teach meditation, and it just happened to where it was like divine intervention at the exact moment it needed to happen, and I had the whole vision of the book, and I knew that I pretty much had to write it. So I started writing it that same day, and then basically dedicated my life to it, and left a previous profession in the process, found myself coaching CrossFit at the gym, and then also working another job on the side and supporting myself while I was just working on that baby, and was able to get it out, and then come full circle. I was able to take over the gym, which hopefully is going to give me some more time to work on more projects. I do have another book that's kind of a follow-up to Meditative Fitness, where it's a daily note. It's based on my emails that I sent or have sent over the years as well. So I've been working on that, and yeah, just kind of getting my bearings under me with being a gym owner now.
Cool.
As well.
Do you write all those emails like every day, or do you plan them out like weekly? Or I know my wife gets them all and shares them quite often.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. So I wrote them for a year straight, and then I think I went down to writing 3 a week, and now I've been recycling. I think I wrote like 450 or something notes, and so it was enough now to where I recycle them just a bit. And every now and then I'll get some new inspiration, and I've been writing new ones in my phone, but I haven't yet started writing new ones for the emails. So anyways, they still, if you haven't seen them in a couple years, they're still fresh, But anyways.
So for some of our, this part of this series is like a mindset series that Aaron and I decided to do, and people that don't know that are listening in on here, like CrossFit, I mean, it's a workout fitness regimen. I mean, it speaks to my heart. I'm an affiliate owner down here as well. But anybody that would walk in off the street and comes into a gym and just looks at a workout, it looks like controlled chaos. But the last thing like I would say brand new people would think about is the mindset aspect of it, or especially that like the route you took with like the meditative fitness like approach to it. But like people that are experiencing this kind of would see like how that definitely falls into it. But like can you talk about like your first, that like as I read it in the book, your first workout there coming like with kind of a meditative background, and how you decided like to implement that into the chaos of CrossFit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. For me, it really started with wanting to meditate more, and I was starting a meditation practice a number of years ago. I was always really consistent at going to the gym. I was an athlete growing up. I kind of fell in love with just the physical exertion. So I would start meditating at the gym before a little bit, maybe on my way, I would start getting a little reflective. And then while I was there, I might be going through a process. Some of it was like an emotional process. I like to use, the workouts. I'm a fairly emotional person, so I use those to process through things. Or for me, also battling depression. If I'm in a low spot, I'll be going to the gym with the intention of working my way to a better place and better state of mind, state of being. And so it becomes about the journey of that process. And I find that to be part of the meditation of it all. It's like, especially if you go into a hard workout or something like CrossFit where you're going without stopping for a little while, that's when you're almost like immersing yourself and you're in your own little world in there, and you can do with it what you will. People can go through it and do nothing with it on a conscious level or on a meditative level, and then there's other times where maybe little bits and pieces are just happening naturally or without much intention. But you can also, with adding intention to it, you can make it a really amazing experience and process, especially when you need it most or when you need to kind of go through a little bit of a transformation in your energy or in your day or attitude or mindset. So I think attitude is everything in those workouts, especially when they get hard. It reveals character, it reveals heart, all those things. And it is pretty fascinating when you kind of get into it.
Yeah, I think like the one thing you just touched on that I love talking about with at least my athletes as well is like that intention part, because a lot of the times I think that's almost kind of maybe people are misrepresent that in their heads of what it actually means. Can you talk about that as far as like when you're talking about approaching a workout with intention, like what is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's that probably has a lot of different layers to it.
Yeah.
And so you can have probably a lot of different intentions going on, but a little bit of what I'm referring to from the meditative perspective is creating that kind of intention with it, or creating this intention that it is like a what I call in the book like a spiritual practice, or it is a way for you to work on yourself as a person. You can become a better person as a result of like going through a workout and watching yourself, paying attention to how you're being, and then what you're putting into it and using it for growth. And so it's like creating that intention of using your fitness for more than just growth physically. So I think that's part of it. But then also another layer is whatever state of being you're in before the workout. This is kind of one of the formulas that I discovered in writing the book. It's like however you arrive, whatever your state is, whatever your present being is, from there is where you set your intention for where you're basically going, or what you want that workout to represent. If whatever's going on in your space, whether it's something that you're having a problem with that you need to work through or work out, or whether it's you just, who knows, whatever's going on in your life, but it's taking a closer look, maybe getting a little bit deeper with yourself, and then putting that into your workout and seeing what happens. And I found that remarkable things happen, within yourself if you kind of put whatever intention you need to in it, and then you see the results at the end, and they kind of speak for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Would you think that it would be like, so we've had our two previous guests one was basically won this huge Arctic race. How many miles was it? 380 miles. And then we had a guy that not only is he an ultra runner, but he also rode by himself
across the Atlantic.
Yeah. And
oh my God.
I know, but like what's crazy about that, and like I thought you'd be the perfect guy to have on for this next one, is like two things they both talked about. Was like you always expect like people do these things like they're gonna give themselves like some big old pump up speech, or they got to really like motivate themselves with all these like outside entities, but really it's just kind of like a methodical process and practice inside their head that they continually go through when they're doing these things. That keeps them in that moment, and that kind of like resonated with me. That resonated with me with what you talked about in your book. And so, I guess my question would be like, so like outside of CrossFit, like if we were like anybody that's going to kind of tackle something like that or anything, maybe like how do you think that the process should start, where it becomes like methodical and in the moment, and not like where you need all of this motivating, like whatever it may be, like outside pump up stuff, where you can just kind of be there.
Yeah. I think part of it, the biggest thing that jumps out at me is focus, is learning how to focus your mind. And that I believe happens the best in meditation. It's partly where you learn how to focus, and that's what one thing I'll touch on real quick, just because a lot of people struggle with this in meditation, is they're not focusing on anything at all, and they'll go in and they'll just try to sit there and do nothing, which is what I would call passive meditation. But that's very difficult to do, and it's not necessarily training your brain to slow down and focus on maybe one thing. And that's where the simplest thing to focus on is your breathing. And then translate that to fitness and how important is just breathing your way through whatever you're doing. And like those guys, I'm sure, are masters with their breath that did those amazing feats.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because the guy who did the Arctic one, he did a bunch of he failed it, and then went back and did a bunch of like breath work, and ended up winning it in 2 years later.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
It's interesting you talk about the breathing in there, and then at the same time with the meditative stuff and focusing on one thing, these guys are out there like by themselves. And so they've got a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing something really exhausting. You have like hallucinations and different things like that going on, and they have to always try to stay present in that specific moment on what they're doing, what their task is, where they're going, how far they have to, just keeping everything in perspective. So I think that's an interesting thing. And also at the same time, what piques my interest in this is people always say, and you said it earlier about, people just try to do nothing. That meditative part, like, no one tells you how to meditate. There's like very few places that are instructive for you. If you want to do it, you want to start someplace, where do you start? Like, what's the best way? How do you do it? Like, what are some practices that you can do to start this process out?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great question. I think finding a resource that you feel good about. So there's so many different kinds of meditation, different things out there that, some might mesh with you as an individual, some might not. You might be drawn to something, or people tend to experiment with different things or they'll go to a class here or a class there, or read about something and practice it and just start doing it. And that's sometimes how it starts. Guided meditations are the easiest at the beginning, I feel. Also, finding a meditation center, if you're in I would say typically might be more of those in a bigger city environment, but if there's something like that nearby where you can go with a group, that can be really powerful, the group aspect, because there is like some sort of cosmic connection that's happening. It's easier to meditate when others are meditating around you, and it multiplies the energy. So I would definitely recommend that as a place to start. But I was, the book that I wrote also, I would like that to be a place for people to start as well. And I wrote it in such a way that it's like a foundation of building a meditation practice. And there's about 50 meditations at the end of the book as well. There's audio on audible.com.
Oh, wow. It's on Audible?
Yes, it is. And so it takes you through like a foundation of, and I could list off the foundation real quick, but it's tuning into your breath, your body, your energy, really relaxing is really the first step, just starting to relax and let your brainwaves slow down. So I start to take you through these different single meditations that are building on each other and building a foundation. But then the cool thing is that the foundation can also be applied to fitness, and getting into it was really crazy how everything that applied in meditation also applied to fitness, like in so many weird ways. So it's the two are just kind of meant to be together in some way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think it's something. It's kind of like a weird thing, like you talked about earlier about like you said that you're an emotional guy. I think sometimes like I've had people that have like gone through. It could be a loss. It could be anything. Just a really bad day. It could be something on the other extreme as well, and they still want to come in and like get their fitness on, basically, as I would say. And one thing I learned, and now that I tell people when they're getting ready to do that, I always say, hey, just be aware. You may become super emotional like during the workout. I go, and that's okay. Do you take that kind of approach with people when they're coming like something like that with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really good to give them the permission to let it out and to say, hey, this is what it's here for in a way.
Yeah.
And it can be a huge release for people or for us when we need it. And I think it's a great time because you're having a moment in a way to yourself. You could be going through a workout and you're sweating and you're crying and nobody really knows.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, those are some of my favorite workouts is where you get to cry a little bit through.
If I say like there's different styles of coaching, like you have the fire breathers, I call them, that are like always up and hype and like trying to keep the room like going or whatever. And then you have, I call like the methodical technical coach who is really kind of honing in on individuals throughout the entire workout. And like, that's their thing. So like, and people would say probably in a CrossFit class, the energy level is usually pretty high and up. So, and if I think someone that would think like meditative, I'm more of like the not so hype and not so exciting thing. How do you combine them in a CrossFit gym? And you're like, how do you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I do it more so in events that are specifically with that purpose and intention. Otherwise, the way that I do it for people is very subtle, and it could be just a giving them a mantra without them even knowing that I just gave it to them, and it could be based on whatever they're confronting or whatever they're facing. Maybe it's their attitude that's starting to, or they're starting to get, pissed off about something that's happening in the workout or frustrated. And whatever it is, just trying to give them something subtle. So it's creating a vibe, creating an energy about it. But yeah, I mean, it's not always the most conducive to what we normally think of calmer meditation, because people like the faster music. And
yeah, exactly.
I kind of enjoy like working out to sometimes some more meditative music, but it's still not all the way, I would say, towards the meditative spectrum, but kind of between.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, I think that's probably like, I think sometimes like that's a great thing about CrossFit gyms is like every community is different, and so like coming in and like someone like really vibing on that style of thing. But I think what's awesome is like you've touched on something that, I mean, mindset practice and even like the meditative mindset practice with like even individual like competitive CrossFit athletes is something that they're starting to really spend a lot of time with. I guess have you had any athletes like big like you don't have to name names, but have you had any athletes reach out to you to kind of help them with that?
Not as of now, but I'm definitely open to it. Would love to work with some, high level athletes and on the meditative side of things. And that's been something in my mind and a goal to work with professional athletes on it too would be I think a blast. I would really enjoy that.
Yeah, I think a lot of, I mean, that'd be, I think, something for sure you should get into as far as that goes, especially reading your book. I mean, kind of staying on track with what we've been talking about, but there's like a really cool concept in your book that I even highlighted, and I'm reading it right now, talking about false limits and pushing through them. Can you talk about a little bit, like can you define false limits in regard to your book, and then kind of how you push through them?
Yeah, For sure. This is something that's been very fascinating to me in my own physical practice, is you just don't know what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And you don't, I wrote this on the board not too long ago, but the quote was, sometimes you're only as fit as you allow yourself to be. And it's like people don't even try something. They just cut themselves off before they'll even attempt something, thinking that they can't do it or that they are not. And it might be a longer term goal, or it could be just one particular workout. So I think it goes both ways on that. But like people that set a limitation that they'll never do something, never do a particular movement, or never do a particular skill or something. But for me, this happened when when we had Murph, which maybe a lot of people are familiar with, the long workout.
Yep.
Marathon, and I ended up doing it twice in one day in about a 4-hour span. And I was scared to even do it, once. I'd done it before, but it still kind of scared me. And I never could have fathomed that I would end up doing it twice. And I did, almost the same exact on both times as far as my time went. And it was just, it definitely was just another experience that kind of blew my mind. And it kind of led me to really, again, realize that you really are only as fit as you allow yourself to be, to do that.
What was was that your reasoning going into doing Murph twice, or what was your reason behind jumping into that brutal of a workout back to back?
So it was kind of one of those things that I would consider to be an opportunity. And we didn't plan on having Murph even twice at our gym, and we ended up having a few people that had to work that day, so I agreed to meet him at 7 a.m. And I was like, I'll just do it with you guys, and then I'll coach the 10 a.m. I ended up doing Murph at 7. I was a little frustrated with my last mile. It was a great challenge and experience, but I had a bad stomach cramp, came up from kind of sloshy stomach from the morning. So I had to fight my way through that, but it left me a little unsatisfied. And I went to the store, and while I was at the store, I just kind of had this idea that I felt pretty decent, and I was like, I wonder if I could do it again. And I wasn't even sure. I didn't even commit fully to myself to do it again. It wasn't like, I'm doing it again. It was like, maybe I can. I said, I'll see, because I try to take care of my body. I'm not trying to destroy it or anything. I want to keep using it for as long as I can.
Yeah.
And so, that's always in my mind. It's like, I don't want to overdo it, but, and Murph's a big one. But I was like, I feel pretty good. Maybe I can. So I went back to the gym. I said, all right, I'm just going to go for a run with you guys, and then I'll see how I feel. And when I get back, I'll start doing some rounds. I decided to change up the way I was going to do it. Instead of partitioning like 20 rounds, I was going to just partition 5 big rounds, which was mentally a little more digestible. I was like, 5 rounds, I can do 5 rounds. And so I came back, started doing the rounds, started feeling really good once I was in the middle of it all. And I do find that workout to be a very meditative one. You're getting your own zone, and you're just like, you find a strong intention to just keep going and kind of methodical. I love what you touched on earlier about being methodical. I find that to be a powerful experience in CrossFit as well, where you're just like in the rhythm of it, and you're in the flow of that particular workout or whatever's happening.
That happens to me. That happens to me all the time. I have to say, and in Murph, it happens to me a lot when I'm just counting reps. I'm counting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm focusing on how my legs feel, and pain. Especially in the squats. By the time I get to the squats, I'm focusing on that, and I'll realize I'll just like, there's almost a blip of time where it disappears, and then all of a sudden I'm at 200, and I go, oh wow, I'm already here, and I'm just going 1, 2, and I'm in my head, I'm just counting each rep. The problem with that is when you have like 30 reps and then you start counting, you get to 40, and you're like, oh, I did too many.
That's funny. There's actually a process I wrote in the back of the book called self-hypnotic counting. And it's basically applying the concept of what we were talking about focusing your mind, and the only thing you're focusing on is counting. And so you kind of stop focusing on your body and the pain or the your legs or whatever. You're just focusing on the counting. And it's amazing. And that's, I think, something, maybe a really good tidbit here is when you're going through a workout, if you're focusing on how much your legs are hurting, it is not helping necessarily. It is not like creating the positive intention to do what you really want to happen, which is to clear, to feel good and fresh and to be able to keep going, to get your legs oxygen, probably what they need when they're burning, or to flush them out, whatever it is.
Yeah, but I think like that sort of thing can apply to like even like a daily. I've noticed since, and this is not like, call it CrossFit, call it whatever fitness you want, like that process of learning how to focus on something to get through it, like counting like that. And I didn't even know you had that in the book, but that, I mean, it really makes sense. And now I'm very intrigued. I'm definitely going to download your book, by the way, on Audible and listen to it. I drive a lot. But
Cool.
But I think that applies, it's really kind of applied to my work life and everything else from the top to bottom. Like I've transferred that sort of mental attitude towards the other things that I do. Like it helps me focus more on the task at hand. And then by the time I realize like that I'm in something, it's already over. Like I've already completed the task.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of that stuff, and so far the things that you talked about here can be transferred over into everybody's daily life. Do you have a lot of people respond to you in that manner as far as like coming back to you with like, man, this really helped me outside the gym and outside of workouts?
I can't say I've had a ton of people with that feedback, but I do definitely believe it wholeheartedly. I think that is the overarching thing about it all too. And maybe it's nothing new, but I think we're entering a different age with it. And what I mean by that is I think they probably used fitness to help build character and many other things, mental fortitude for years, or a long, long time. But that's definitely something that happens. And that was a fascinating thing about writing the book. So as I said, that so many things about meditation apply to fitness, and all those things that apply to fitness also apply to life, basically.
Yeah.
So in a way, like there's a lot of the book, or a lot of what I wrote, that I felt like was like just one big metaphor for life and for things like that, where, I mean, just even the simple metaphor of overcoming challenges and how the workout is self-induced challenges that you're facing, and how you encounter those might be the same way that you encounter challenges in life. And that's one of the ways you can use it as like a personal development training. And that's just one little example, I think.
Well, I'll give you an example. You can take it or use it with other people if you would like. But like, what's funny is, so I just got back from a trip, and I have I would say a healthy fear of flying, where I can get on the plane and I accept that I'm on the plane and it's going to get me to the destination. But the destination, I'm always kind of like just don't talk to me a bunch during the plane ride. I'm not in that kind of a state of mind. But I was reminded yesterday on the trip back, before I got on the plane, I was like, okay, hey, you know what? I want to make sure I want to go through Clark's book again, because I've read it twice, and I wanted to make sure I knew what I wanted to touch on or get in with it. And I got to the back on the hypnotic counting thing. Well, I wear this bracelet sometimes. It has like these little beads on there. And so just throughout the flight, if I felt like we got some turbulence, it was always the worst part for me. I just would start counting these things over and over again. Like, that's all I did, is just counted it over and over again, and I got into this like trance, and the next thing I knew is like 30 minutes passed and the turbulence was done, and like, all right, I'm okay. So you're like, that kind of inspired me to try something new outside of fitness, outside of the gym, to use it. So I think like you're talking about, there's a lot of parallels between your book and like using them in everyday life. Like, one of my favorite stories in your book is like, I can't remember now off the top of my head, but you're in the car, you get into this meditative state, and you've said basically it's like you're almost floating down the road. Can you kind of like touch on that experience? Because I loved that part of the book. I've tried to do it multiple times and I haven't been able to do it yet. But I mean, just kind of how you went through there in your mind and got there.
Yeah, that was a powerful one. You know, sometimes you have these meditations that stick with you that are maybe bigger than some of the others, or in your mind or in your heart. That was the first time that I ever cleared my tired energy in my body. And I had eaten kind of poorly the night before. We were traveling. I was in Florida. We were about to head back to Texas. I was exhausted. I felt sick. Like, there's been a few times in my life where I've battled like chronic fatigue and just this sick, tired feeling. And so this was one of those times where it was creeping up. And I was like, I can't be like this on this drive, so I've got to try to do something about it. And I had already had I think this is after I'd had a crazy experience at the gym where I had released some knots in my traps. Knots had been bugging me for weeks, and I went into a meditation, started doing this process that I call oxygen flooding or oxygen flood release. It's basically where you breathe at a slightly higher rate than normal, much deeper. It's bordering on hyperventilation, but it's like these deep, long breaths. So they're not short breaths like hyperventilating, but it's like deep, long breaths. And it's almost like you're taking in more oxygen than you need in a resting state and flooding the system with oxygen. It starts to generate this vibration or this buzz in the body, and then you can actually do stuff with it and focus on. So I went into the knots, kind of mentally, and sent the vibration of that area, and then all of a sudden the knots, like, I don't know how long it took, but it was probably 5-10 minutes, 15 at the most, and I felt this warmth and this dispersion, and it was like amazing. So I applied the same thing when I was in the car meditating with my friend Frank driving, and started doing the oxygen flood release, and started to just breathe out all the tired, foggy, crappy energy. And as I was doing that, it was the weirdest thing, but my face was contorting and my eyes were like watering really bad. Tears were just streaming down, basically, like all this energy leaving. And when I was done, this again was probably about a 10 to 15 minute process. And when I was done, I was wide awake, like totally clear. I didn't feel any of that tired, sick energy that I had felt before. There's more to the techniques that I sometimes use too. I'll kind of like what you did with your counting the beads. Sometimes you just create what you need in the moment and you just do it. And it might be more advanced after you've practiced or after you've done some meditating and you start to get comfortable. But that's what I try to do in my book, is give people all of what they need, that they can start creating their own practices and getting creative in their meditations to accomplish things, to do things that are useful, like clearing out tired energy or something like that. And so, but that particular time also, we were driving, and I just remember feeling the whole car vibrating too, but it was very weird being with my eyes closed. I think it had to have been one of the first times I meditated in a car like this, and hovering just a few feet off the ground. So I'm in the meditation, I'm just like, and then I'm just feeling it, like that sensation of just flying down the road or floating down the road, and hovering above the ground, because I was in such a vibration too that it kind of just melded all together. But yeah, it was pretty good experience.
I've tried to replicate it. I can't yet. I'll be honest, but like you said, well, I think what's awesome about your book, and you just touched on it, and the fact of like you give people these tools, and they can use them at their the way that it works for them. Not like this is the way you got to do it. This is not a one size, or this isn't a one size fits, or this is a one size fits all type of a thing. We got to make sure that everybody's using their own experiences and awareness to be able to utilize the tools you're giving them. I guess a good way to talk about this is like you talk about awareness a lot in your book, and we just talked about it quite a bit throughout this conversation. Can you talk about, like, I guess the one thing when people come to a CrossFit gym or anything in their life, when they're like, I think that's a good thing to say. People lack of being aware of what's going on or what's about to come, and sometimes they almost focus the awareness, I think, sometimes on the what's about to come, like looking too far forward instead of being aware of what's in the moment, of what you talk about in your book. Can you speak to that as far as like how you get people to be more in the moment instead of like trying to look at 10 steps ahead?
Sure. One of the top things that resonates is focusing or being aware of your state of being at any given time. So that could include your heart, what you're feeling, what kind of emotions you're bringing into it. That's always a good place to start, is what are you feeling right now, kind of thing. If somebody's flustered, if somebody's, going through something, or if they're kind of absent-minded, or they may lack some grounding. So getting that question is a way to ground them in something, rather than being kind of, if you can see me, I'm putting my hand above my head, kind of floating in the clouds, maybe head in the clouds. We need to get a little more grounded, a little more present right here. So pulling them kind of down from that, and that could be by focusing on one particular thing, or bringing them to a physical thing as well, which sometimes even a physical touch might cue them properly if it's a movement-related thing, or if you're trying to get somebody to be more aware of their body position, something like that. And so you've got your feelings, you got your state of being, your mind, your thoughts, what's going on in your head, it could be your energy level. So all these different things that we can take inventory over, which is part of a mindfulness practice. And that's also, once again, from there is kind of where we set our intention for where we're going or for what we're doing. So by bringing it into the present, and then where we go from there.
Did you say, like, I think I heard you say the first part of the podcast, that you kind of came up with this whole system, and part of the process was your own struggle with depression. Is that correct? Yeah, that's been a big part of my life, and what's led me down this path that I've been on, this exploring spirituality and meditation. Well, mental health. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, the reason I bring that up, and I notice you saying that, is because so many people struggle with it anyway, on small scales, bigger scales, whatever it may be. And I kind of wanted you to share a little bit about maybe how either this helped you, how you overcame some of that, and how these philosophies in your book can kind of help people that are struggling with the same sort of issues with depression and things like that that you may have had.
Absolutely. So I would say it's been a multi-pronged approach. However, what I've found is that everything is basically linked, and by what I mean, part of it is even nutrition, food, which is a chapter in my book as well, and then part of it is our mental state of being, our emotional state, and then you've got the fitness side of the equation. So fitness, meditation, good nutrition, all those things to me have been like a lifesaver for helping me to basically clear my space. And I still will occasionally encounter it or have to move through something. I feel like I better understand it these days, and I understand that it's trying to tell me something or teach me something, or it's there for a reason to move through the energy. But the workouts have been extremely powerful for, in the past, when I would say struggling more than I do now, to wake up and I would just wake up kind of depressed, which I think partly was nutrition and just waking up feeling bad after eating not very well or eating things that were causing all kinds of problems in my system. So waking up just feeling bad or feeling low, feeling depressed, and I'm going to the gym no matter what. So I'm going to use it for something that's going to get me to a better place. And there's many, many days where by the time I was leaving the gym, I was happy. And I'm one of those people that struggled to a point where I probably spent 20 years where I didn't even know what happiness felt like. It was just absent.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was, not fun, or I didn't even know how to enjoy life at all. So to be happy was a miracle. And so I would have these experiences where I would leave after meditation too, feeling happy. And all that full circle really to say that multi-pronged approach that I have, that everything is linked together, and part of it is creating this clear body or this clear mind, so my energy is clear. And when it's not, then my job is to do something about that. It might be, okay, maybe I need to clean up the nutrition for that, because maybe I had a cheat day, and so or a couple cheat days in a row, so maybe my body's not producing as much serotonin or something like that, or chemically something's off, and I can feel it when it goes off. And so my job is to get that energy in a more harmonious place. And I can do that with meditation, with fitness, and with good nutrition. That's at least the top three on my list for sure.
I really like I like the whole thing really, but we both looked at each other and we picked up on something that you said where you recognize the feeling now of when something's off, and then that it's there for a reason too, and then you push through it. You push through it with these things that you've created with the nutrition and the three-pronged approach. So I really picked up on that, and because I'm a firm believer that sometimes we feel sad for a specific reason. There's a reason that we're sad. There's a reason that we're happy. There's sometimes it's our body and our minds telling us something that we need to fix, instead of just trying to tell ourselves that everything's okay. And with that three-pronged approach, you're really taking it where you're actually fixing the issue.
Is that what kind of drew you?
Yeah, I would say so. And then at the same time, I really think what you're saying is spot on. And it's not about trying to ignore it or pretend it's not there, or it's not trying to mask the underlying things that are going on. It's really about pulling up those underlying things, bringing them to the surface, letting them out, acknowledging it. And that's part of where being a strong feeling person or feeler, those emotions are causing problems sometimes on the surface. And they're very powerful. They're the kind of emotions that, like, in a way, led me to writing a whole book and spending years doing it and dedicating my life to it. It's like that powerful where it moves you. And that's the kind of thing, like, I think Tony Robbins might have said it better, but it's like, I don't want to live life in the shallow end. I want to live in the deep end. And that's why I like to get others in the deep end with me and talking about shit that matters. To me, that's what life's all about. It's, getting real and, dealing with that stuff. To me, it's even some of the beauty of life, or it's where the richness comes from, or where you get, I wasn't able to experience joy because I had lockdown on my heart. My heart was dead inside, basically. And it wasn't until that woke up and I was able to start feeling, and I had to feel a lot of the pain or a lot of the bad stuff before I could start feeling the good again. But just opening it up, opening your heart, feeling things is the way to go. And that's where a lot of power is found, and that's where you can multiply your energy, connect it with your mind too. I was thinking about this just with the idea of talking to you guys about mindset, and then I thought about the term heart set. And when your heart is set on something, it is so powerful. And then, but also aligning that so your heart and mind are set together is, I would say, the most powerful.
I think that's such an awesome thing you just touched on, as far as like embrace, like I think especially in the CrossFit world or in anything that can translate over to the everyday stuff, is I think sometimes when people are going through those things, they tend to run away or not wanting to experience. Like if you hear people talking about, like, if being a big crowd gives them anxiety, what they're going to do is they're going to stay home and not do anything. If going to work, gives them anxiety or depression, they're gonna end up calling in sick a lot because they just try to avoid those things all the time. One thing I think you just touched on that I don't think a lot of people maybe pick up on it, but we did, is you just talked about not treating the symptoms, but almost trying to treat the problem with this 3-pronged approach. You're not just trying to treat one thing, you're trying to treat the overarching problem with everything that you were going through. Can you kind of talk about, how would someone recognize that they're doing that? Like, where they're just treating the symptom and they're not trying to fix the big problem?
Yeah, I would say that's modus operandi for the majority of the population.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, we understand that.
Yeah. So the question is, state it again for me.
So if, like, how could someone recognize that they're just treating the symptom and they're not treating the problem? Like, they're just like, I'm sad, I want to stop being sad. Okay, this is what makes me stop being sad right now. Okay, but you're sad all the time. So if we need you just to not be sad all the time, we can't just not get you being sad right now.
Yeah. What I would say is digging deeper, being comfortable, and this is where we talk about sitting with the feelings, whether that's sitting in a real meditation or whether it's just sitting, and just reflecting, or whether it's standing in front of the mirror and allowing yourself to be with whatever you're feeling, to not push it away, to not resist. So it is a form of surrender. And that's step one, perhaps.
No, that's a powerful one, though. You're talking about, like, people, I think a lot of the times, I think when I've talked to people, they talk about, like, how they hate they love waking up in the morning, but they hate going to bed at night because when they go to bed at night, they think about everything they got to do the next day or everything they didn't accomplish the day before. So they really don't like that time period. I guess, and I try to tell them, like, well, that's kind of a time period you can you think about what's going on in your life and why are you always worrying about these things, or is it something new every single day, or what is it? Like, I don't think people should run away from that time. I guess, but like a lot of people are scared to spend time in that thought process. Would you encourage people to spend a lot? I mean, I guess what would you think like a healthy amount of time would be to spend on like thinking about those things or going through that whole experience you're talking about?
One of the rules of thumb is to sit and don't get up until you're happy, or don't get up until you have shifted.
Man, that's powerful. That's a tough thing. That's powerful though.
Yeah, and it may not be possible all the time that if somebody, but at the same time, the shift doesn't need to take very much time. So we don't want to get stuck necessarily on the shift has to take 20 minutes,
right?
Or whatever. It really could happen in an instant. It's going to happen in an instant, but we have to be willing or ready or able, but then it may not necessarily be on our time or on our decision. We can't force it. That's where we have to surrender into it. We have to go a little deeper into what we're feeling, bring it to the surface, say, why am I feeling this way? Why am I thinking this way? Why is my mind doing this right now? Or why, whatever it is that the person's facing, but go deeper, sit with it, bring it to the surface, open your heart, and then from there, once your heart is open, we want to turn it upwards in a positive direction, that we're not going into this downward spiral and getting stuck in something worse and just, wallowing or going further down. So turning it into a positive direction and letting in the good. So once it's open, you can let in some of the good. It doesn't necessarily mean that whatever you're facing isn't still there, but you're able to kind of feel both. You're able to feel the good and the bad at the same time. That's happiness too, because happiness isn't always rosy, peaches, and everything. Happiness to me is crying my eyes out sometimes.
You're talking about a lot of like powerful things in the sense, powerful feelings. Are you getting any resistance as far, like, this might be a tough question to answer, but like, I would say we're in a generational, still in a generational shift, and I find myself in a tug of war with it sometimes, where you have the old school way of thinking, like, hey, leave your feelings at home, don't talk about them here. But now there's kind of like almost a focus, like, no, this is where you're supposed to talk about them. This is where we're supposed to be friends. We're supposed to help each other through these types of things. Are you getting it? You think you're getting any resistance with this field now?
I would say just in a way from people in my life that I in some ways, preach or teach or go off on my tangents. I do get a little uppity too, like I get fired up about stuff. But yeah, like there's just such a connotation with feelings and emotion, and it's so crazy because even women that we tend to think of as more feeling and emotional, or that like a lot of the ones in my life that I'm surrounded by are often apologizing still for feeling things or for having, or for crying or whatever. It's like, I'm sorry. And meanwhile, I'm the one who's always encouraging people to cry, to let it out, to feel, deeply, and to experience life, I don't know if it's as much resistance as it is just that that's happening and that people are resistant to it. And so I try to, I do feel like in a way that's part of my job or part of my duty, and that was part of my duty in writing the book, is to help with that. And because of who I am just as an individual, and it is more rare to be a male and be kind of well.
Yeah, but I tell you one thing, as far as the resistance that you might feel, people always want to, no matter what, like if there's that type of a person that's like talks about their feelings and emotions and like is perpetually trying to be happy as much as they can, even if people like, I don't know, show a little bit of resistance or give a little bit of like a gentle like nudging is like, hey, you're doing too much, they still want to be around those people. So at least that I've found, and no matter what, like it doesn't matter like what they're like talking about or anything, like, man, this person's always finds the good or the joy. So man, that's kind of fun to be around. It's almost infectious. I find myself with that. There's sometimes like I withhold my emotions, but man, sometimes it's okay to be around someone that doesn't, or kind of like, because then I just all of a sudden start almost have like word vomit where I just start letting it all out too. So whatever you do, I think so I think it's okay to be like, even if you get resistance, to be that person still.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and it may just be the approach or the way to go about it. But one of my favorite things in the world is getting into a deeper conversation with somebody, talking about things that matter. If tears are shed, all the better. Or if not, that's okay too. But just feeling what you were talking about. And that's where you're connecting to the words. You're connecting with your heart, and you're putting your heart into it. And that's also what I believe leads to flow states or many other.
Did we lose him?
Did we lose you?
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
there we go. Okay, got you back.
Yeah, just lost power on the headphones, that's all.
That's all good.
We were waiting so intently on that answer. We're like, what happened?
Yeah, well, it was a good answer, but
It's all right. No worries.
All right, man. Well, do you want to, before we end the podcast, you want to like let everybody know where they can find your stuff, find you, and the information, and your new book coming out, and all that good stuff?
probably the best place is the website, meditativefitness.com. We're also on Instagram at Meditative Fitness. Those would probably be the two best.
Two best things to get you. And then, do you have an approximate time frame for your follow-up book to the Meditative Fitness book?
I hope to have it out before the end of the year or close to the beginning of next year. Would be a good goal right now.
Right on.
Awesome. Looking forward to that, brother. Clark, thank you so much for talking with us and going over this. This is an aspect of the mindset part that we really wanted to touch on, and we're glad we got to do it with you, bro.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, next time we're up in Dallas, we'll have to try to...
Tiger Den CrossFit, we're going to be dropping in.
Yeah, visit your gym.
Sure, yeah, come on over.
Be awesome, man.
Anytime.
Thanks for doing this.
You got it. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Have a good one, Clark.